Meanwhile, tonight, we may finally see the end of U.S. military assistance to Saudi Arabia and its using in its war with Yemen that has killed 50,000 people. The U.S. House of Representatives today passed a measure to stop funding the killing. However, President Trump says he will veto the measure because he thinks it's important to have relations with Saudi Arabia. Michelle Greenstein has this story.
Rick, today the House voted to end U.S. military involvement in the war on Yemen. Now, they did this by employing the seldom-used 1973 War Powers Act, which gives Congress the ability to remove U.S. forces from a conflict if there's no declaration of war. Here's what the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee had to say. The president will have to face the reality that Congress is no longer going to ignore its constitutional obligations when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to determining when and where our military is engaged in hostilities. Now, this war on Yemen has left tens of thousands dead, including many women and children. In the past 4 years, the Pentagon has actively backed the Saudi Arabian effort to take swaths of the country back from the Houthis, which makes sense because an independent Houthi government in Yemen would threaten Washington's interests in the country. Since 2015, when the Saudi-led coalition started bombing the country, there have been over 19,000 air raids in Yemen, which have manufactured what the UN calls the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. We've seen photos of school buses, food storage facilities, medical facilities, and ports turned to rubble with U.S. and U.K. supplied bombs, missiles, and planes. Right now, 70% of the Yemeni population is food insecure, and 10 million civilians are what the UN Food Program calls one step away from famine. I should also mention that during this war, U.S. weapons have been found in the hands of al-Qaeda affiliates in Yemen. This was reported even by CNN, who until recently has been ignoring this conflict. Now, when it comes to ending U.S. involvement in this war, it's been a long road. The Senate first passed the measure in December, but Paul Ryan, who was the House Speaker at the time, wouldn't take up the resolution. Now, Nancy Pelosi did, and the House passed it in February, but when the House decided to declare opposition to so-called anti-Semitism via an unrelated amendment, the Senate had to start from scratch. In fact, today, Republicans tried to agitate the process again with a last-minute move to attach an amendment to condemn the movement to boycott, divest from, and sanction Israel. Now, in December of last year, when the Senate voted to pull U.S. forces from Yemen, it was the first time in 45 years that a chamber of U.S. Congress voted to pull forces from a military conflict under the War Powers Act. So this is pretty monumental. It's not just about ending the Trump administration's role in the Yemen war. It's about decades of unconstitutional wars, with President Trump only being the latest in a series of presidents to ignore the fact that the power to declare war belongs to Congress and Congress alone. Now, even though President Trump may veto this, having Congress finally wake up and invoke the War Powers Act again, thanks to lobbying from an anti-war advocacy group, is a step in the right direction. Rick?
I'm Rick Sanchez. You found us on YouTube, and that's awesome. But you know what? I'm also live every night at 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern on DirecTV and Dish and cable and satellite, the RT app, and Pluto TV. I'll see you there.